All right, so welcome to Real Entertainment. Today we got a double movie review. I actually saw these movies a few weeks back, a few weeks earlier for me recording and uploading this. Um, and we're talking about Blackberry and Fool's Paradise. I don't think either of these are even in theaters anymore. They may be in a few select theaters by the time I upload this, but just in case you were at all interested in either of these films, whether you want to watch it in theaters, whether you want to catch it on streaming, whether you want to buy it on 4K, Blu-ray. Let's talk about it, quickly, and I'll tell you what I thought about these films going in and coming out of the theaters. Um, Let me start this off by saying that as a huge It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan, which if you don't know by now is one of the longest running live action comedy shows, last I checked. Um, so I was very much looking forward to watching both of these films back to back, which I did. I decided to watch both of them same day. I started off with Fool's Paradise, then went straight into Blackberry. Um, so as a Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan, I was excited to go see these films because Glenn Howerton is in Blackberry. He's starring in Blackberry, and he has a minor role in his friend's movie, Fool's Paradise. Fool's Paradise is, I believe, written, directed, and starring Charlie Day, who plays Charlie in Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Um, so they kind of had competing movies that were released on the same day, same month. Um, but Glenn Howerton is in both of them, so you know, as long as at least one of the films were good, he wins either way, right? Um, so again, needless to say, I was excited to check out both of these films. I like both of these actors; they're both hilarious, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're very talented guys, as they are the creators of that show. So obviously, they do a lot of the ideas and the writing. So I was looking forward to watching both. So again, I started off with Fool's Paradise. Now, let me say I saw both of these films on what they call, I believe, Value Tuesday here in Wisconsin at the Marcus movie theaters. It used to be $5 Tuesday, but with inflation and everything, they decided to raise the prices. Now it's like $7 a film, which is still not bad. So, just in case both of these movies turned out to be disappointing or crap, I didn't really waste, too much money. Um, so I started off with Fool's Paradise. And let me just say that luckily I got the disappointing of the disappointing movie of the two out of the way first. I'm sad to say that. I'm very sad to say that, because again, Charlie Day, big fan of him. He wrote, directed, and starred in this film. I saw the trailers, and the trailers looked interesting. It looked interesting enough. I was like, this might actually be a pretty decent film. Halfway through this movie, I was disappointed, and I knew that this was gonna end up being a slog. I don't even think it's. I don't even think this is a 2-hour film. I think it's a little bit less than that, but it felt like a 2-hour film. It felt a little bit longer than that. Um, and let's get into why. Now, let me briefly kind of touch on Charlie Day. I'm a fan of his. Again, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I've enjoyed his work in Pacific Rim. I've enjoyed his work in the Horrible Bosses films. And that film that he did with Ice Cube, where they were both teachers. I think it was called School Fight or something like that. That was a decent comedy. Um, so I enjoy him as an actor. He's a funny guy. He's very talented. I actually think he's kind of underrated as a comedic actor. And I would like to see him and Glenn Howerton in more things. But when it comes to this film, Fool's Paradise, from beginning to end, all I could think of to myself was, why is this film so boring? And what was the actual point of the film? Because as far as I can tell, it's meant to be kind of charming. It's meant to be a comedy, and although it did have charm to it, not quite enough to merit its existence. And although it got a few chuckles out of me, if this was truly meant to be a comedy, it was severely lacking in that department to the point where, again, not enough charm, not nearly enough comedy for this to merit being made, being written, being acted in, and being produced and released for mass consumption. Now, to be fair, I don't think this was in like every theater that's available. I think it was in select theaters. But even still, I was like, what is the point of this film? And again, it's sad to say as a fan of Charlie and I watched the Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast, and I've heard him talking about this film and how this was been a passion project of his for like over 10 years. And it's just like, wow, for him to have been working on this for 10 years and for it to turn out so boring, like that's really the best word I can use to describe it. It was very boring. It's kind of interesting in the beginning. You've got a deaf character, or not a deaf character, a mute character, doesn't say a word at all, just kind of makes faces, right? He's in the loony bin, and they can't afford to, keep taking care of him anymore, so they just release him out to the streets, and he just stumbles his way into becoming an actor, right? So it was kind of interesting the first 15, 20 minutes or so. Charlie Day was doing good enough as the character, even though he wasn't really doing much, right? Ken Jeong was doing good enough to keep me interested and entertained about where this movie might go. Ray Liotta was doing good enough, and then you had a few other characters like Kate Beckinsale. You had Adrian Brody. It was interesting, somewhat interesting in the first 15 to 20 minutes, and then it just really goes nowhere and has no point, and it's very like, again, it's head scratching. I'm like, what is the point of this film? I don't understand what it's trying to accomplish exactly. And that's my frustration with the film. Plain and simple. You know, for example, Charlie being this character and him being the silent type of character that we've seen with other characters like Mr. Bean and whatnot, it wasn't really executed very well, or it wasn't executed well enough. He was barely even a character. There was no character growth. you know, Not much personality. He just makes the same kind of facial expressions over and over again. And he gets himself, he doesn't even, it's matter of fact, it's not even that he gets himself into situations. It seems like life just kind of happens, right? And people are just kind of, you know, for whatever reason, deciding to include him in their life and do things as crazy as get married to him. It's very odd and didn't make much sense. And again, there was no really comedic spin to it, and it just wasn't done correctly in the way that I think he was trying to do it. Um, so again, that's disappointing. Uh, Especially if he was trying to go for a Wes Anderson type of comedy, because Wes Anderson does have that kind of, I don't know, whimsical, that kind of charm, kind of weird personality, kind of comedy to it. And it seems like this movie might have been going for that a bit, but it just didn't quite do it correctly. Again, overall, this movie just made for a very awkward and disjointed experience overall. And I'm honestly kind of baffled how this movie turned out to be this way. Especially with all these actors. You had a lot of good actors in this film, a lot of notable notice and actors in this film that you know of. And I'm shocked that they agreed to do this film but it happens. It happens all the time. Um, so sadly, much as I love Charlie Day, I cannot recommend this movie. I wouldn't waste my time even watching it on a bored, lazy Sunday. To be honest, I wouldn't even recommend it in that kind of scenario. It's not worth watching in the theaters. It's not worth renting. But I guess if you are a Charlie Day fan and you've got a bunch of free time and you're really that curious, go ahead, check it out. And hey, come back to this video. Tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm a jackass or tell me if you completely agree, right? But yeah, that's my opinion on that film. But again, there's hope, because as the saying goes, save the best for last. Because when it comes to Blackberry, god damn did I have a fucking great time watching this movie. I wouldn't say it was a 10 out of 10, but it was very damn entertaining. Very damn entertaining, especially right after watching Fool's Paradise. It's like, wow, it's the complete opposite. So, again, not only am I a fan of watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but I'm also a fan of Glenn Howerton as an actor and you know, everything I've seen him in, he's been solid. He's had his own show called AP Bio. I've seen a little bit of that. I haven't seen as much of that as Always Sunny, but I've seen him in that, and he's competent. He's solid. He's a funny dude. He's actually a pretty decent actor, and I'd like to see him in more because him starring in this movie alongside Jay, how do you pronounce his name? Barucho. Hope I'm not mispronouncing it. But you know that actor. He's been in a lot of Seth Rogen comedies. He's been in Tropic Thunder. He played the nerdy character. Um, but yeah, both actors. Matter of fact, nearly every actor in this film, they nailed their roles. In the acting department, I don't have any complaints about that. But again, we're talking about BlackBerry and the story of how BlackBerry came to be, the rise and the fall of it. And even though I found out retroactively, in hindsight, after doing research, that apparently the story of this film is not quite accurate. It's probably like 40% accurate and 60%, lie, made up, entertaining, for entertainment's sake. And for the most part, I'm okay with that. I'm glad I do know the actual real story just by looking it up and going on YouTube, going on Google, and you'll find that the actual person that Glenn Howerton is playing, has actually is aware of this film. He's spoken about it, not so much in a negative way, actually in a fairly positive understanding that it's just entertainment, you know. But again, to talk about this movie, to discuss this movie, Glenn Howerton steals the show, or should I say movie, portraying real life Canadian businessman Jim Balsillie. Yes, his last name is Balsillie. Interesting last name. Who is the former co CEO of Research in Motion, which of course created the Blackberry cell phone. And Glenn Howerton, as this character, he brings the same charisma, same intensity, same swear words, and great comedic timing as he always does, like when he plays his character Dennis in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But in this movie, he's much more down to earth and a little less unhinged, but he's still unhinged, you know. He puts on a very good, if not great, performance in an otherwise overall good and very entertaining film. Jay Barucho, who although is not quite as, charismatic or electric as Glenn, but that's also because of the character he's playing. He puts on a very good performance as Mike, was it Lazardus? Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but the character of Mike, the creator of the BlackBerry phone, the founder of BlackBerry as well. You know, in fact, everyone in the film plays their roles very well, including the actor who plays Doug, otherwise known as one of the secretly most richest men in the world, at least the character that he was playing, not the actor. The story is portrayed in a, real simple and straightforward way, with some time jumps to sort of speed up the story. And I will say that, I actually wouldn't have minded getting a little bit more into the details of how BlackBerry came to be. I wish they would have kind of showed a little bit more of that, but I can understand if they didn't want the film to feel, too bloated, for the average moviegoer. They kept this movie, I want to say this movie was like an hour and 45 minutes. Like it was short, straight, to the point, and that made it very entertaining. And the pacing, you know, pacing was done very well. Um, Camera work feels very 80s, 90s retro, most of the time, and also had that kind of The Office somewhat shaky camera zooms at times, and it was done really well. Other movies and shows have tried doing that and failed terribly at it, but it was done really well in this show. It doesn't annoy you, at least it didn't annoy me. Um, and again, I have to say that overall, I very much enjoyed this film. I highly recommend it. You know, if you like me enjoyed films like Wolf of Wall Street, Big Short, The Founder, Social Network. If you enjoy a show like Succession on Max or HBO Max, or movies and shows that are similar to this, then this is probably going to be right up your alley, and you'll probably enjoy it just about as much as I did. Um, you know, I still haven't seen Air yet with Chris Tucker and Ben Affleck. I still have to check that out, but if I had to guess, it's probably, it's similar to this movie. It's about how a product or company or person came to be, their rise and their fall. Um, yeah, so again, if you've seen those types of things, you kind of understand what you may be in for with this type of movie. Um, and yeah, really like this movie. It's again sad and disappointed that Fool's Paradise was as boring and disappointing as it was. But I was glad at the end of the day that this movie was very good, and I would recommend it. I don't do ratings too much, but if I had to give this a rating, I would probably give it like an 8 out of 10. Probably like a B. 8 out of 10, B, very entertaining. Definitely one of my favorite films of the year, probably like my top 10 I've seen so far this year, but we're only in May or June, so we still got a lot of months to go, a lot of great movie or potentially great movies to come out. Mission Impossible, Oppenheimer, Oppenheimer, however you pronounce it. We've still got a lot of movies to go, but I highly recommend checking this film out when it comes out on streaming, when it comes out on 4K and Blu-ray. Especially if you already know that you like these kinds of films and shows, I highly doubt that you'll be disappointed with this one. So again, sorry about Fool's Paradise. Enjoyed this film. Um, let me just say, I'm a big fan of Motorola phones. I don't know what the story is behind how that rose and somewhat fell. And right now, I think Motorola's doing okay. They could be doing better. But I'm kind of interested to see a movie about Motorola in a similar fashion that this film was done. So we'll see if that ever gets made. I doubt it, but that'd be interesting to see. Um, yeah, so again, if you enjoyed this film, if you plan to check out either of these films, or if you'd like to discuss it in the comments below with me, I do reply to most comments, if not all of them. Let me know what you thought about these films. Let's discuss it in the comments below. And thanks for watching Real Entertainment.